Welcome to the Medical Billing Blueprint podcast, where we break down the complexities of medical billing, revenue cycle management, and healthcare compliance. Join us as we explore strategies, tips, and industry insights to help doctors, practice managers, and medical staff optimize their billing processes and boost practice revenue. Let's get it right with the Billing Blueprint.
What if I told you this whole mysterious world of medical billing? It's actually the engine keeping healthcare running, you know what I mean? And today, we're diving deep right into the heart of a question that keeps medical practices up at night. In-house billing, or should they outsource to the experts?
It's huge. That decision impacts a lot. And thankfully, we've got some seriously good resources to help us navigate all this.
For real, we're going to break it all down. By the end, you're going to feel like you've earned yourself like an honorary medical billing decoder ring. And hey, even if you never have to wrangle a CPT code in your life, understanding this, it gives you a whole new view on those doctor visits.
Might even surprise your doctor with how much you know, right?
I like it. So, got to start with the basics. What exactly is in-house medical billing, according to our sources? Essentially, it's when a healthcare practice, like a doctor's office, they handle all the billing themselves with their own team.
Spot on. Think of it as a mini department right there in the practice. They're doing everything, taking medical procedures, translating them into those secret codes, the CPT and ICD-10 ones we always hear about, the ones insurance companies use. And they chase down rejected claims, handle patient payments, real code breakers.
Speaking of CPT and ICD-10 codes, our material does a pretty good job explaining those, actually. Basically, they're like turning medical stuff into a format insurance companies get. So, regular checkup, that's one code. But let's say the patient also gets a flu shot during that visit. Boom, different code entirely. Each has its own rules, reimbursements, the whole 9 yards.
That's where real expertise is key. This industry, it's notorious, right? Codes change, regulations shift constantly. Our source even points out how this makes it super tough for in-house billing teams to keep up.
Makes sense to me. Staying on top of all that sounds like a full-time job already.
Yeah.
But okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the appeal of keeping billing in-house. Control. That's a big one. Our material highlights.
Huge advantage. In-house, the practice, they're steering the ship, the whole process. They can tailor it exactly how they need it. Think of a specialized clinic, right? They've got unique procedures, billing that's different from a regular doctor's office. That control makes a difference.
And don't forget, easier communication. Having your billing team right down the hall. Got to make things smoother when things get messy, right?
Streamlined for sure. Source even compares it to just like popping down the hall for a chat versus navigating a call center maze when you've got an issue. And this is key even for the bigger practices, the ones with the resources to do billing in-house. Keeping a good, experienced billing team, that's crucial.
Because if you've got people coming and going from the billing department all the time.
It throws everything off. Errors pop up, delays happen, and ultimately it hits the practice's bottom line.
It makes those hiring billing specialist signs you see at clinics suddenly seem a lot more urgent. Yeah. But okay, let's flip the script. Look at the other side, outsourcing. Lots of folks say it's the way to save money.
And it can be, to a point. Our source, it acknowledges that, yeah, outsourcing often means lower overhead. So instead of salaries, benefits, software, training, all that, practices pay one fee to the billing company, all bundled up.
So for smaller practices especially, it's got to be tempting. They might not have enough volume to even justify a whole billing team instead of trying to do it all.
They leverage the experts, a company that eats, sleeps, and breathes medical billing. Like in any industry, sometimes it's just smarter, more efficient to get someone who specializes in that thing.
It's like that leaky faucet, right? You could try to fix it yourself, but probably going to end up calling a plumber anyway after making a bigger mess. And speaking of, well, efficiency, our source got me thinking about hidden costs, stuff we overlook.
Oh yeah, they add up fast.
Even outside of medical practices, we've all been there. The DIY project that ends up costing double because you should have just hired a pro. Or trying to save by cutting corners, only to run into worse problems later.
In-house billing could be constant staff training, keeping up with software that changes all the time it takes to fix mistakes. Outsourcing, potentially, you dodge some of that.
And our source makes a great point. It's bigger than just the money, although obviously that matters. Size of the practice, their goals, how complex their billing is, all those are factors.
It's clever how the source lays it out, like asking you the questions to think about. Like they're walking you through making the decision yourself.
Putting us right there in the practice manager's seat, weighing it all out. And one dilemma they highlight is that classic struggle.
Yeah.
wanting control, versus keeping up with these regulations that never seem to stay the same.
It's a tug of war, isn't it? A practice might really value that direct control you get with in-house billing, but what happens when the regulations become too much? Or worse, if trying to handle billing in-house starts hurting patient care because resources are stretched thin?
Oof, tough spot. And you can tell our source is kind of subtly saying, hey, remember, patient care comes first throughout all this.
100%. Easy to lose sight of that when you're drowning in paperwork and codes. Speaking of which, our source actually offers this tool. It helps practices calculate the costs and benefits of each option.
Useful for sure, but got to mention it is promotional.
Transparency is key. But even so, that core idea of looking at costs versus benefits, that applies to so many decisions, professional and personal.
It's like that saying, right? Measure twice, cut once. If you've got a system, a way to really see those costs, those benefits, makes a world of difference.
Totally. And even though that tool we talked about, yeah, it's promo stuff, it does make you realize there's no magic answer here. No one-size-fits-all for medical billing.
And that's where it gets interesting. Our source goes deeper into outsourcing and how it's not as easy as just, here's all our billing, take care of it.
Right. Outsourcing, it's got flavors, different models. You got the full service folks. They handle everything, A to Z, the whole shebang. Then there's the more like specialized options where a practice might outsource just one piece, like just claim denials or the coding part, but keep the rest in-house.
So it's all about finding that perfect balance, right? What works for that practice in their situation.
Exactly. And our materials, they give us some good questions to think about, things practices should be asking when they look at outsourcing. How much experience does this billing company actually have? What about specialties? Do they focus on a certain type of medicine? And their track record, how fast are they getting claims in? How's their reimbursement rate?
Important stuff. Just like if you were hiring someone to work on your house, right? You wouldn't just pick the first name in the phone book.
Yeah.
Got to see their past work, talk to people they've worked for, make sure they know their stuff.
Exactly. And beyond just the practical stuff, our source wants us to think bigger picture too. Long-term goals, is this practice going to grow a lot? Any new tech, new procedures coming that might make their billing more complicated? All that plays into whether outsourcing even makes sense down the line.
It's not just about right now. It's like, where's this practice going? What's their vision? Love that point.
Right on. And here's another layer, makes it trickier, the human side. Because outsourcing billing, yeah, it might make things run smoother, maybe save some cash, but you're also like handing over this super important part of your practice to someone else. Big deal.
Some practices, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow, giving up that control.
Oh, absolutely. Takes a lot of trust. Got to have that open communication. The practice needs to believe that this billing partner gets them, communicates clearly, does things by the book, ethically.
Which goes back to that whole, like, doing your homework thing we were saying.
Yeah.
Really vetting those potential billing partners, making sure they're a good fit, values-wise, standards-wise, the whole package.
And it goes beyond just checking off boxes on a resume, Got to find a partner that gets the practice's culture, the patients they serve, their whole philosophy about healthcare. It's got to mesh.
Because when you get down to it, that's what matters, the patients, right?
100%. In-house or outsourced, the billing, it should all be adding up to a good experience for the patient. That means bills that make sense, answers when they've got questions, and just being fair and transparent about the whole money thing.
Which brings us to something else. Our source digs into the tech side of medical billing. How's that changing things?
Oh, healthcare tech? It's like a whole world that's constantly evolving, and billing is right there in the thick of it.
Electronic health records, the software practices used to manage everything. There's a whole bunch of tools now, all aimed at making billing smoother, more automated.
Game changers, some of these advancements. For in-house teams, tech can cut down on those manual errors, make sure the data's cleaner, and free up staff to deal with the really tricky stuff. No more just pushing paper.
Like giving them superpowers almost.
Maybe not superpowers, but definitely some handy gadgets. And for outsourcing companies, staying ahead of the tech curve. That's how they stay in the game, how they prove their worth to clients.
So no matter which way a practice goes, in-house or outsourced, embracing technology, it's not optional anymore. It's like mandatory to survive.
For sure. It's kind of fascinating when you think about it. Tech is reshaping the entire medical billing landscape, and that impacts how healthcare gets delivered, how it gets paid for, huge ripple effects.
Makes you realize, even behind the scenes, with all those codes and claims, progress is happening, innovation is driving things forward.
It is. And as we peel back the layers on these advancements, a big question pops up. How does all this new tech, how does it change the game when a practice is trying to decide between in-house and outsourced billing? Whole new factors to consider.
Great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to something else. Our source uncovers the role of data analytics in medical billing. Yeah, getting pretty high tech here.
Yeah, it's like medical billing discovered spreadsheets, and it's never going to be the same.
Seriously. Our source, it talks about how people are using some really smart data analytics now, like really digging into the numbers, finding trends, figuring out how to get the most reimbursements, even predicting what healthcare costs will be down the line. Wild stuff.
So it's not just like, did we bill the right code anymore? It's like, what can we learn from all this data? Exactly. And this is kind of where things get blurry, that line between in-house and outsourced. Some practices, they might have the people, the know-how to do this data stuff themselves.
But then others, they're probably better off going with an outsourcing company, one that's already got the data whizzes on staff.
Right. It's always about the right fit, like we've been saying. Our source makes a good point. This whole in-house versus outsource thing, it's not a one-and-done decision. Got to keep looking at it.
Makes sense. Practices grow, their needs change, the tech's always evolving. Got to stay nimble.
For sure. They have to be ready to adjust, to look at their billing like every so often and see if it still works.
So it's more than just the day-to-day getting those claims out. It's got to be strategic, matching up with the practice's goals, bigger picture stuff.
Absolutely. And that's why even if you're never going to be the one coding those claims, understanding this stuff, how medical billing works, it's important. Gives you that wider perspective.
It's like we're seeing how all the gears turn, how this whole system, even though most people don't think about it, it impacts healthcare as a whole.
Exactly. By taking medical billing apart, figuring out how it works, we can appreciate the skill it takes to do it right and how much it affects everything. Patient care, how well providers are doing financially, it's all connected.
Like we found the cheat codes to healthcare or something.
Right. And with this new knowledge we've got, we can be part of those conversations about healthcare costs, why things are so expensive, how much transparency there is, and what role technology should play in all this moving forward. Important stuff.
This has been awesome, really digging into medical billing with you. From those codes that sound like gibberish to most folks to the choices practices got to make. Fascinating stuff.
Couldn't agree more. Hopefully our listeners got a lot out of this, some good takeaways, and maybe, just maybe, a little more appreciation for how complex, how important medical billing really is, even though it's the behind-the-scenes stuff nobody sees.
And hey, maybe it'll even inspire some folks to go out there and learn about other systems, the ones that keep the world running, There's always something to discover.
That'd be fantastic. Curiosity is a beautiful thing.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those questions coming, folks. And remember, there's a whole world of fascinating systems out there just waiting to be explored.